But you're such a natural born leader. I used to hear teachers say that about me all the time when I was in elementary school. And I don't say that to brag. I say that because the irony of it all is that I spent most of my young adult life, my teen years and my 20s, and even into my 30s, hiding as much as possible, doing the absolute opposite of what most people consider leadership, just doing what I was told, minding my own business most of the time, and trying not to stand out too much, which is not what we think about when we think about leadership. And what I would love for us to do today, as part of my mission to redefine leadership and to move us all into a space where we can self lead ourselves to success, whatever that definition of success looks like to you, not in keeping necessarily with what other people tell you success should look like, but being true to your calling into the things that you know you're meant to do. So what I would love to do in our conversation today is share with you the 3 key shifts in my mentality, in my mindset as a leader, that allowed me to understand that I have been a leader my entire life, that all of us get to lead at some level, and that if we will just understand these 3 things, we can elevate our leadership, we can change our leadership mentality, and affect more of an impact, a positive impact in those around us as a result. So are you ready to dive into the leader mentality and the 3 shifts that we should embrace in order to move forward? Then stick around to this conversation, sincerely speaking. You need confidence to move forward. Without confidence, you can't really achieve that dream, desire, calling, or lofty element, venture that you've had in your heart to do. Have you heard that before? That's what most experts and gurus out there sell you. Well, I have a slightly different take on it. I believe that you and I can create a feeling and a sense of confidence on demand that can propel us forward without us having to jump through all the hoops and try to figure out all the things that the gurus never really tell you how to do anyway. So if you have been struggling with this notion that you need more confidence, or if you simply have a goal, a dream, an aspiration, a movement, something that you want to start in this world, an impact that you want to have in others, and an influence that you want to use to support and help and do some good out there in the world, then I invite you to head on over to confidence.marciamaro.com, where you are going to find an amazing offer for my course, Confidence on Demand, which will give you the 3 secrets to generating that feeling and that sense of confidence when and where you need it. So again, head on over to confidence.marciamaro.com and take advantage of this opportunity to generate and create confidence when and where you need it. And in the meantime, stick around and chat with me here on Sincerely Speaking. See you soon. So, as I said before, there's this expectation that leaders should act a certain way or be a certain way. And because I was a little precocious, and because I have 2 older brothers that I learned from and that I tried to imitate and be like, I showed up in school as a little eager beaver 5-year-old. I don't even think I was 5 yet, or I had just turned 5, something like that in kindergarten. And then I skipped a grade and all these things, but it's not because I'm anything special. It's because, like I just said, I was just a little precocious, and I have 2 older brothers. And because I'm nosy, I spent a lot of time trying to learn the things that they were learning. So, because of the way I acted and because of some of the things I did, I had teachers telling me all the time that I was born to be a leader. Now, people have this preconceived notion of what leadership looks like, of what leaders should act like or be like. And they're usually expected to be an extrovert, and they're usually expected to be outgoing and to talk a lot and to have all the right answers and to be extremely poised and look confident. Well, I was like that when I was little because I would follow my brothers around and try to do the things that they did. And I felt like I knew the things that were being taught to me because of that, because I just followed my brothers around. But then when I entered my teenage years and my 20s and even the beginning of my 30s, I went through some experiences that led me to going inside, like retreating into myself almost. And I became, by all definitions, an introvert. And I used to spend so much of my time hiding. And then I realized one day that when I became a teacher, I realized that there's a space where we all lead, and there are different levels of leadership, and there are different spaces in which we can lead, and we need to shift how we perceive leadership and the definition we give leadership, right? Like we tend to think about leadership as a position, as a title, as someone who has a team that they get to lead to a certain outcome or to a certain result. But the reality of it is that leading is just having a vision, casting that vision, whether it is for you to take the actions necessary to reach that vision, or whether you're bringing other people along with you towards that vision, and then having the wherewithal, right? Having the determination and the desire, the true passion to follow it forward to completion, to make sure that you are always taking steps forward in the intent, with the intent of reaching that outcome that that vision has created. Make sense? So if you have something you'd like to accomplish, if you are working towards something that is bigger than you, or if you have a desire and a dream to bring something to life that is bigger than you, even if the only person that knows about it is you, you are a leader in my book. All right. So the three things that we're going to be discussing in this conversation are mentality shifts, mindset, perceptions that are going to help us step into more of that leader role and move ourselves more in the direction of making that continuous progress towards that vision, towards that calling that we know we're meant to work towards. Make sense? So the first thing is that everything is my responsibility. Everything is my responsibility. The first time I heard this concept, I was actually I was participating in a leadership conference retreat, right? I was participating in this leadership program. It was very intense. It took 3 months to complete the whole thing. And it was stages and work, and they would basically sequester you for the time that you were participating in this leadership program. But the first time I heard the concept of everything is your responsibility, I got really mad because I was like, no, 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 no. You don't understand. There have been so many things in my life that I didn't look for, I didn't ask for, I didn't create. But then I understood, and it took me a while, and I actually understood the concept of responsibility after the leadership experience, not through it. When I started to look around my life and I started to realize, well, as long as I think that this is somebody else's responsibility, what I am essentially saying is that then it is up to them to make it better, that it is theirs to do something about. If I don't accept responsibility for this thing, then I have no power over it. And I am putting myself in a victim position because then there's nothing I can do. I just have to grin and bear it, take it as it is handed to me, and just accept whatever comes my way. And I had lived for so many years in this victim mentality, playing small, thinking like I couldn't do anything, believing that other people's perceptions and other people's ideas of what I got to do and how I got to do it were the law for my life. And nothing could be further from the truth. Now, the first element in understanding this idea that everything is my responsibility was understanding that responsibility and fault are not the same thing. Something can be your responsibility without being your fault. All right. I'm going to say that again. Something can be your responsibility without being your fault. So when you say that something is someone's fault, it's because they caused it, because they had some hand in making it happen. That's not what we're talking about, regardless of who made it happen. And part of this everything's my responsibility mentality has a lot to do with not even worrying about or concerning yourself with whose fault it was. That is not a question we ask when everything is my responsibility. It doesn't matter whose fault it was. It doesn't matter who caused it. It doesn't matter how it came to be. It's there. And the worst thing that we can do is try to ignore it or pretend like it's someone else's job to make it better. There's no Prince Charming riding in on a white horse to fix this, to rescue you from this. So what we get to do when we understand the mentality that everything is my responsibility is stop worrying about assigning fault and start understanding that if it is affecting my life in any way, shape, or form, if it is in the scope of what I am experiencing in any way, shape, or form, then it is my responsibility to make a decision about what I'm going to do about it, about what I am going to do about it. Because see, this is the second part of everything is my responsibility, is understanding that as a leader, I either do the thing or I get it done. I'm going to say that again. As a leader, I either do the thing or make sure it gets done some way, right? So when I am activating my leader mentality, I'm understanding that whatever needs to happen, I'm the one who's going to set it in motion. Now, that doesn't mean that I'm going to lone wolf it and try to do it all myself. And we're going to talk more about that in the second mindset shift or mentality shift. But I do understand that if things get done, it's because I set things in motion. I either got it, I either did it, or figured out a way to get it done, right? But if things don't get done, it's because I didn't do the thing, whatever I needed to do in order to set the thing in motion so that it would eventually either I do it or it gets done somehow, right? And the third piece of this is understanding that delegating is not the same thing as passing the buck. So yes, delegating is important. I just said you can't do everything alone. But if you're going to make sure that things get done, and that involves delegating it to someone else, then what you get to do and what I get to do is follow up, set deadlines, communicate effectively, make sure that my expectations are clearly communicated so that the other person knows what I'm expecting. It involves making sure that at the end, before the end result needs to be presented or before the end result gets to happen, I get to go back and double check and follow up and make sure that things are done the way that they are meant to be done. Right? So that's the first one. It's everything is my responsibility. The second leader mentality that I would love for us to embrace is that there is always a way and I get to find it. There is always a way and I get to find it. Right? There is always a way. Now, that doesn't mean that you have to have all the answers, which is another mistake that we make. We tend to think that people in leadership have to have all the answers. They have to have all the solutions. They have to know how everything works and how everyone works and how everything is going to turn out. That is not fair and it's not true, right? But what it does mean is that we get to ask as leaders the right questions. We get to ask the right questions to the right people so that we can get the answers that will lead us to seeing where the solution is. There is always a way. We just get to ask the right questions to the right people until we get the right answers that are going to help us move in the direction of getting the thing done, right? So it boils down to understanding that there are certain questions that are empowering and that are helpful, and there are some questions that are not, right? Like in the previous point, we just said that asking whose fault it is, not helpful, not going to move us in the right direction, not going to bring any kind of solution to the situation, right? But asking, how can we, right? What specifically can we start doing right now? What is another way in which we can see this? How else can I interpret this information? Who is out there that might be able to help me shed some light on this thing, right? And we will talk more about that last question in a minute. But it's understanding that certain questions are helpful, certain questions are not. I need to sift and see which questions are going to help me. Why questions are seldom helpful, right? Whose fault is it? Is never helpful. So we start sifting through those questions and seeing which can lead us to answers that might support us in coming up with the way to get where we want to go. The second part of this is we get to be open, right? There's this misconception in the world that the leader cannot show weakness and they cannot show that they don't know something. That is the most ridiculous thing I have ever heard in my entire life. Because if we are not open to asking questions and to understanding and accepting that we can't know everything, then we will stop ourselves at the level of the knowledge that we have today. We will never progress. We will never evolve. We will never find new solutions. We will never innovate. So we get to be open to the fact, first of all, that other people might have the answers that I'm looking for. That person that has the answer that I'm looking for might be the one that I least expect. So I get to listen. This is extremely important, especially when we're looking at parenting as leaders, right? As leadership. When I used to work with families, that was one of the things that I used to tell them all the time. Kids sometimes have very important things to say. Sometimes they have the answer, and sometimes they know what they're talking about. But we tend to dismiss what they say, thinking, oh, they're just kids, they don't know anything. That's not necessarily true. So the same thing goes for any level of leadership that you're in, whether you're leading a team at work, whether you're leading a team at your business, whether you're leading a team at church, whatever the case may be. If you are leading anybody, even yourself, be open to the fact that the person or people you're talking to might actually have some great things to say. And it's important to be open to the possibility that they might have some answers that we don't, right? And then the third part of that is focusing more on the who and not on the how, right? So when we're thinking about a way, the first thing that comes to our mind is, how am I going to do this? How am I going to get to the space, do this thing, earn this money, do whatever it may be? And we focus so much on the how that sometimes we lose sight of the fact that there's someone out there who has either already done it, has some experience in it, or knows someone who has some experience in it or has already done it. So if we, instead of buckling down and trying to figure out the how, we start looking for potential who's, people who can support us, people that we can delegate to, people who might have experienced something similar or completely different from what we have experienced, people who might be able to help us see things in a different light. And sometimes they don't even have to know anything about what it is that we're going through. That's the beauty of life coaching, for example. Being a life coach is an amazing experience because you don't have to know even the subject that you're talking about. You just have to be there to listen, to ask the right questions, and to help the other person tap into what they already know and draw out the knowledge that's already inside of them. So it might be a mentor or a coach who can support you in drawing out and figuring out what your next step is or what the solution might be. Even though you might not see it plainly in front of you, you might have the answer inside of yourself, and the who might be just that person that listens well enough, that asks the right questions, that has enough general wisdom to help you tap into the answers that might already be lingering inside of you that you have not been able to tap into yet. All right. So the first one was, everything is my responsibility. The second one is, there is always a way and I get to find it. And the third one is my favorite. The third leader mentality that I would love for all of us to embrace is that I get to lead myself first. And this is why I'm a self leadership coach. This is why I do what I do. I get to lead myself first. See, I honestly and wholeheartedly believe that the reason why we are experiencing such a lack of leadership in our government, in our environment, in our systems, in the way that we operate as a nation and as a world is because we have stopped teaching people how to lead themselves first, right? This is something that was done in ancient times, and then we have lost it as time has passed, I believe. But this element of leading yourself first has first and foremost to do with emotional regulation, with that emotional intelligence piece, where we get to be aware of what we're experiencing, what we're feeling, where it's coming from, and how do we best deal with and leverage and or manage. I hate that word manage because we tend to think about forcing things when we think about manage, right? But how do we best use whatever it is that we're experiencing so that it supports us instead of damaging us or holding us back? How do we take this thing that I might be feeling and instead of letting it control me, figure out how it can support me, how I can use it, how I can work with it so that instead of paralyzing me, it propels me, right? How do I take these emotions and use them as what they are, signals and tools to help me decipher the best direction to move in, right? The second part of that is our self talk. We are so aware of what other people say. In fact, we live on the age of offense. Everybody's offended. Everybody's so easily like just turned on in this anger mode, right? Everybody is just so volatile all the time. And you have to watch what you say so carefully. But the one person that we are not careful what we say to is ourselves. And self-talk is essential for us to lead ourselves and then be in a position to lead others. You can't lead anybody else until you can lead yourself to achieve certain results, to do certain things, to experience certain levels of advancement and innovation and whatever it is that you're looking to do. So it is really important to work with and manage our self talk and make sure that we are telling ourselves things that are helpful, that are empowering, and that are encouraging. And then the last piece of getting to lead ourselves first is understanding that everybody has certain resources at our disposal. We all do, right? And I call them the 4 T's. It's time, talents, treasures, and teams. Time, talents, treasures, and teams. And when we understand that we all have those 4 resources and we start looking at ways to maximize and leverage those resources, then we start leading ourselves differently because we no longer have this mindset or this mentality of I can't, or I don't have what it takes, or I don't have enough, or I need somebody else to whatever, right? Because we understand that we have these essential resources at our disposal that we can bring into play whenever we get to lead ourselves towards our vision. And let me explain those 4 T's real quick. Time is self-explanatory, right? We all have time. How are we prioritizing our time? It's learning to say no so that we can say yes to the right things. It's learning to put boundaries around access to ourselves, to our energy, to the way we operate, right? So that our time is protected. It's redeeming time for the really important things instead of wasting it in things that are important to other people or that might seem urgent but are not really leading you anywhere, or things that are just time wasters, right? So it's taking inventory of how we're using the 24 hours we have in a day and figuring out the best way to use them so that they lead us to the best results that we're looking for, right? Talents are your skills, your abilities, the things that you have learned, the things that you're good at. Everybody's good at something, at many things actually. So just taking inventory of what that is and realizing that you already know more than you think you know, and that you already have skills, talents, and abilities that can help move you forward in whatever project it is that you have in front of you. Treasures has to do with material things. Yes, money, but also things like computer, technology, house, car, clothing, anything that you have material at your disposal counts as a treasure. So how can you leverage what you already have to get you where you want to be? And then finally, teams. We've said this several times already. We cannot lone wolf this thing. That's not how we were designed. We were designed for community. So the more that we can understand that we have teams around us and that we get to build teams to support us in our vision, the more we can leverage everything else. So the leader mentality that I would love for all of us to start embracing, making shifts around, and understanding that our mindset has to do with these things are, first of all, everything is my responsibility. Secondly, there's always a way and I get to find it. And thirdly, I get to lead myself first. I hope you have found this helpful. If you have, please share it with someone that you know might find it helpful as well. Go over to marciamar.com and check out the things that are there. And if you are looking to create confidence on demand, go to confidence.marciamar.com and get my mini course on confidence while it is still on sale. I will see you next time here on Sincerely Speaking. We'll chat soon. Thank you for tuning in.